take your seats here. I appreciate your patience with us today. Holy cow, what a turnout. Not expecting it, but thank God you all showed up today. I'm going to blame it on the weather. For those of you who may not know, my name is Kevin McCarney. I'm the chairman of the Mesa County Republican Party, and I'd like to welcome you all to our monthly lunch. We've got a lot of things to get through, so I want to make sure that we get through them and try to get you out of here at 1 o'clock today, as we always try to do. But we're excited. Just as a reminder, today's guest speaker is Matt Lewis. And where's my song? Wave to the crowd, Matt. Thank you. Matt's our Republican sheriff, and he's doing a great job for us, and I'm excited to hear his presentation today. I was at a lunch with the women here at the beginning of the month, and the Project 616, or Shield 616, is a great organization, private groups that are providing extra protection for our first responders in vests and things like that. And I'm proud that Matt has already provided that type of protection for our sheriff's officers. So he really needs a big round of applause for that. At this time, I'm going to ask my board to stand up real quick and wave to everybody. I've got Barb Brewer, Alden Soroka, Pat, wave to the crowd, Pat Conda, Treasurer. And where's Parker? Parker King in back, in the black, the man in black in back. I'm going to call Barb Brewer up. We're going to do God's country and then the presentation. So Barb's going to give an indication of how to stand.
Good afternoon. Everybody, please join me in prayer. Thank you. Heavenly Father, we humbly come to thee today to thank you for the many blessings that thou cease to bestow upon us in this great country. The ability for us to be able to be together today, to freely express our opinions. And we say these, and we ask for thy spirit to be with us. And we also ask for blessing on the food that we're partaking of, that it will strengthen and it will nourish us. And we ask for thy spirit to be with us and watch over our leaders. We pray for our president, Heavenly Father, and for this ludicrous thing that is taking place in our capital. And we ask again, Heavenly Father, for thy spirit to be with us as we go through this meeting. And we say these things humbly in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Stay standing, please. Ben is going to come up and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I don't think I need the microphone. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ben. And I always know that this is one meeting where we're never going to have a problem saying those words. So thanks again, Ken. At this time, if I have any representative from the best part of the Mesa County Republican Party, the Mesa County Republican women here, would they stand up and wave to us all and introduce themselves? Alice is the president. Don't sit down there. Thank you. Miss Benjamin. And their fundraiser out here, Nina. Am I missing anyone? And while I'm on the subject of the Mesa County women, Ruth, I saw you here. Ruth Ehlers, please stand up. This is your 2020 Mesa County Republican Woman of the Year, and so deserving. I was on the board when Ruth was the chairman back in 2012. And a lot of what I do here, I've had her now through the way she ran the party. She's an inspiration to me and to a lot of people, so I really appreciate all you've done, and you're so deserving of that award. All right, I have a bunch of elected officials here, so I would like them to stand. Bo, stand up real quick. Bo's here. He works under Dan Rubenstein in the prosecutor's office, and had a quick message for him.
Yep, Dan would be here except for the fact that he is serving you right now in the middle of a jury trial. He was on his way and got called back to the jury trial. So he'd be here otherwise. Sorry he's not here.
Great.
Senator Ray Scott, good to see y'all. Enjoy it.
John?
Matt Lewis, Mesa County Sheriff.
Tina? Scott? Rose? Mr. Brownlee?
Ken Brownlee, Mesa County Assessor.
Scott?
Scott Tipton, Congressman, 3rd Congressional District, Colorado.
What you saw is an example of the power of the Republican Party in this county. We control this county and we need to continue to control this county. That means that we need to be involved in the election coming up, and so I've got some dates coming up for you to remember. But it also means that we need to do a little work in our city government. We don't have anybody from the city council here today, and that's a little disappointment. And you're going to notice a particular absence of anybody in the school board being here today. We need to work on that, folks. And so it's not just every 4 years we need you guys to turn out. We need to start turning around the offices that are allegedly nonpartisan and get our county back on track. It's a great place to leave. If we keep it that way, we don't need the Boulder influence over here. So thank you all for doing your wonderful job as elected officials for us. We're very proud to have you representing us. At this time, I'd like anybody who's running for office to stand up real quick. Ray, we're going to start with you and go around the table again. Ray?
Me again. Mesa County Commissioner, District 1.
Bob?
Bob Prescott, Lincoln County Commissioner, District 3. I hope we have this kind of turnout caucus night.
Thank you. Matt?
Yeah, Matt Diers, happy Friday to everybody. It is a great turnout. We're ready for Mesa County Commissioner in District 3.
Janet?
Janet Rowland, running for Mesa County Commissioner in District 3.
Hi, I am Lauren Boebert, and I am your conservative candidate for Colorado's 3rd Congressional District. To learn more about me, I would like for you to all join me at Citrollas tomorrow at 2 p.m. Thank you.
Scott?
Scott Tipton, running for Congress, 3rd Congressional District, Colorado.
So just as a reminder, we have a presidential primary this year. That's March 3rd, forced upon us by the wonderful folks over in Boulder. But if you want a voice in your local, county, congressional, and statewide offices, you need to come to caucus. March 7th, it's a Saturday. We're holding them at 10 o'clock. That means you guys can go out and still party. It's not too early in the morning. Caucus locations are going to be on the website sometime next week, right, Barb?
Yes.
We've ironed everything out with the school district, and we're trying to adjust things so that we can put a little bit more traditional locations back into the caucus process. It's going to mean the candidates have to run a little bit more, but they need it, so they need to get in shape for campaign season anyway. But the locations will be there. But I cannot stress to you how important it is for you folks to turn out to the caucus. That is where delegates are chosen for the county election. Those county delegates are going to decide who's going to be on the ballot for the primary in June. So if you want a voice and who's going to be on that ballot, you better turn out to the caucuses and the assembly. If you want a voice in 3rd Congressional District on who's going to be on the ballot, you need to turn out the caucus and get elected as a state delegate, because all the state delegates that go over to The state assembly this year are also delegates to the 3rd Congressional District. Okay? Mesa County has about 173 folks we're going to send to the state convention this year. Okay? So what happens if you can't make your caucus? Tell a neighbor to go and nominate you anyway to be a delegate to the county, to the state, to the 3rd CD. That's allowed, okay? But please get involved. The caucus process is the most basic representation of what our government was supposed to be. When we started the revolution, it wasn't a bunch of folks that were big leaders. It was people meeting in neighborhoods and towns to get together to decide the future of what our country was going to be. And people say, well, it's so involved. No, it's not. It's 2 hours out of your day. If you can't invest 2 hours into the future of your country, I'm not sure that we should allow you to vote. Okay? It's important that we be involved as people because that's what our founders wanted. They didn't want to make it easy to vote. They wanted to make you be involved. So please be involved in the caucus process March 7th. Look on the website for locations. There's training that we're going to be doing. Please do not miss that date. It's going to be a great time. And vote in the presidential primary on March 3rd as well. Okay? Second important date I want you to remember. If you like lunch, on February 8th, we're going to be hosting our annual Lincoln Day dinner. In spite of what everybody else thinks, Abraham Lincoln was the first Republican president. Okay? And so we honor his presidency and his help in founding this great party every year by having a dinner. And this year it's on February 8th. It's going to be right here. Our guest speaker is going to be Derek Wilbert. Has anybody ever heard of Derek? I'm going to tell you right now, if you have not had a chance to hear Mr. Wilburn speak, he is fantastic. He's the chairman of the Rocky Mountain Black Conservatives. He has a little group that sponsors young people over to Washington so that they can get involved in the government, and he pays for it out of his group's pocket, never asks the government for any money. He has a fantastic family. He's got a son that's a lieutenant in the Air Force. He's got a daughter that's going to CMU. That's why he gave us such great terms to come over and speak this week for this event. He wants to come over and see his daughter, and then he wants to speak to you. And he has a son right now that's a sophomore that's the best sophomore runner in the state of Colorado right now. So, great family, inspiring speaker, $65. We'll also have a live auction. Okay, so I've got an item that I'm donating. It's anybody golf here? Golfers? Anybody ever heard of Sam Snead? I've got a hand-signed sculpture of Sam Snead that has his autograph on there, so I'm going to put that up for auction this year, just to raise money for the party. So it's going to be a great event. There's going to be lots of stuff available. Early Valentine's Day gift, husbands, if you want to bring your wife and have a nice dinner, it'd be a good opportunity for that, and they can't complain for the next year, okay? I'm going to bring all of them up real quick. If you guys haven't noticed, we have a brand new website, and all that's going to give us a lowdown on that and some other stuff going on electronically within the party.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming out. My name is Alden. I won't take a minute because you're not here to hear me, but we have made some significant improvements over the past few months in the Republican Party of Mesa County, our online presence, whether that is social media or just the website itself. I think our social media participation rate has increased several-fold. I don't know exactly how much we're up to right now, but it's huge. There's weeks that we'll get up to 30,000 people. Facebook tracks that stuff that we actually reach. We have a huge participation on social media. We're very excited about that. We finally got our website launched. I didn't build it. My brother actually did. He donated his time and built the website that we currently have. And we're hoping to, it's a great platform that we can build on going forward in a lot of different ways. It's very easy to add on to take away from it. We can constantly keep it updated. It's by far the most advanced website that the Republican Party has ever had in this county. I'm hoping within a week, maybe a little bit longer than that, we are going to have a page on the website just dedicated to the caucus and assembly process. We'll have information about what the caucus is, how it's going to be working this year. The state party has a database that you're going to actually be able to go into and enter your address and find out exactly where your precinct is if you're not sure about that. So I'm hoping to be able to integrate that into the site and I want to have all of that on there as soon as possible. So just keep an eye out for it. It is in the process and it is under construction. The events calendar is actually just a Google calendar. It's the same thing the state party uses. So if you're used to the state party's website, it's the same thing. It's Google Calendar. You can go in there and look as far ahead in advance as we've added events. You can click on the event. There will be information, as much information as we can possibly include on the event in the calendar. It'll have things like ways to RSVP. If it's an event you can buy a ticket for, it'll have a link to that, the address of the location where it's going to be occurring. And so there's a whole lot of information in that calendar. If you have any problems using the calendar, please let me know. There's a couple of little glitches that I've encountered trying to get it to where you can use it and not have to sign into Google, and if you don't have a Google account and all that. So just send an email, Mesa County Republican Party at Gmail if you have any issues there, and we'll make sure to get that taken care of. And then also one last thing I want to mention is our office. We've also opened the first full-time, year-round, permanent office that the Republican Party in this county has ever opened, to my knowledge. And we're really excited because there's individuals and businesses who have stepped up to sponsor this. It wouldn't be possible otherwise. We have almost every month since we've opened it, we have had an individual or a business in this county, a Republican business or individual who stepped up and sponsored this office. Cody Davis is actually our sponsor for this month and for a couple months coming up. We have a few, and everyone else who's sponsored up to this point. We have 2 or 3 openings left for 2020. Assuming I can get everybody who sponsored some of the months last year to do it again, the same months this year. I only need like 3 or 4 more people, and we'll have the office paid for this year, which would be great to have that taken care of and out of the way going through the election. So if you are interested, it's a $600 donation. That'll cover all of our office expenses and rentals for a single month. And if you're interested in that, get with me. We'll talk about that and get you set up for a month that's open. And I would love to have that wrapped up this month and be done with that for the year. So I'll turn it back over to Kevin and our speakers, but thank you all very much. Good to see you.
What's the website?
Oh, I'm sorry. MesaCountyGOP.org. There's also 2 other domains that we have registered in case you want to use those as well. Mesa County Republican Party.org and GOPMC.org. All 3 of those domains will take you to the same site. MesaCountyGOP.org is probably the one that we'll be using. We also have a YouTube channel now. This event today, all the events that I can possibly film, speakers, anything is going to be on that YouTube channel. We've got a few neat things up there already, some rallies and other stuff that's happened prior to this. So be sure to check that out. It's just Mesa County GOP is the YouTube channel. Go on there and subscribe. And all this stuff will be there for anybody who misses events in the future. So thank you all very much.
And Alden promises to edit out anything that I've said, so thanks so much, Alden. And his brother did a great job on the website. Very happy with it. And just as a reminder, the lunches are on there. We really appreciate reservations. We got a little taken back today, but I did want to mention my friends here at the DoubleTree have done a fantastic job today. And they always do a fantastic job, and I'm so proud to be associated with them because they take care of us. And when things like this happen, where we said 75 and we have 130 people here, they do an awesome job of picking up the slack for us and helping us out. So our representative, one of them is right back there in the corner. Let's give her a big hand. I did promise some time to a couple candidates today, Scott, as well as Lauren. So whoever wants to go first.
Ladies first.
Ladies first. Come on up, Lauren.
This has to go way down. All right.
Give you a chair to sit.
I really thought that was it. Wow, this is awesome. We have very interesting topics coming up today. I'm very excited to hear the plans for red flag law here in Mesa County. But nevertheless, I am Lauren Boebert, and I am here as your 3rd Congressional District candidate. There are a lot of things that are going on that we are losing our state and the direction that our country is going. And as I was becoming engaged in my community, alongside of all of you, I was noticing a trend that Colorado seemed to be left behind. We may be sort of a petri dish for some of the elected officials' plans for a progressive socialist nation. Yet the voices of we the people were growing silent. And then last year we went through a very vicious legislative cycle just here in our state. And I was on the ground with many of you trying to take our state back. I was carrying petitions. I was one of the many who joined Rose Puglisi in carrying a petition for our national popular vote. That determines how we elect our president of the United States of America. And I did not have time to carry that petition. I did not have the resources to put aside, to put towards that. But I did everything that I could to secure Colorado's vote for the President of the United States, and I became the second most circulator, the signature gatherer for Colorado for national popular vote. And now, my passion for these conservative values began when I was a child. I was raised under Democrat-failed policies. My mom believed the lie that you need government to survive. You need government to feed your children, to house them, and certainly to provide health care for them. When we moved to the western slope of Colorado, hope began to develop in me. When I got my first job at the Rifle McDonald's, and I brought my mom home that paycheck, there was such a sense of empowerment that I could do a better job taking care of my family and my life than the government ever did. At 16 years old, I began developing conservative values and embracing them throughout my life. Nothing has been easy, nothing has been handed to me, but when times get tough, I get tougher. We took a risk in opening a restaurant in Rifle, Colorado, and once again, government tried to tell us, you can't do this, you will fail, and I refused to be dependent and limited by the government again. So I took a risk and I opened a restaurant. And I took the values that I learned from my faith in God and counseling women at the local jail for 7 years, and I implemented them into my business, empowering minorities and encouraging them that they could do something better with their lives. This wasn't just a gun thing when we opened up. Real life values, just like everything else, produced what we all know now as Shooter's Grill. A man was beat to death, and the question was raised, how will I defend my people? So I began to open carry that day. I stumbled into an advocacy for the Second Amendment, which grew into an advocacy for freedom. And as your Congresswoman, I will do everything that I can to secure your freedoms. We elect our officials to secure them, not tell us how they're going to regulate them. We have a fine constitutional document and a list of things that we told our government, these belong to us, you cannot touch them. That does not only include the Second Amendment, but the First and the 10th, all the way through. And I will be pro-Constitution, pro-life, pro-Trump. I will never give your tax dollars away for illegal immigration or amnesty. I will do everything I can to stand and fight for you and give you your voice that you deserve. Thank you all so very much.
Okay. Thank you, Lauren. I get to adjust it up because I'm not as tall as Scott, so. And he's better looking. Come on up, Scott.
Thank you, Kevin. Pleasure to be able to be here with you. Need to be able to tell you a little story. Flew in from Washington last night. Stopped to be able to get a card and was talking to the young lady behind the counter. Said, you're in Congress? And I said, I am. Said, well, I want to tell you something. said, I became a Republican. Said, my family was Democrat. But she said, when President Obama was elected, I looked at what he was implementing. She said, that's not what I believe in. She said, I actually support Donald Trump. Those are the people that we are starting to reach. Coming out of Washington, I'll tell you what, this last week demonstrated exactly what the Democrat Party is all about. We had Nancy Pelosi with a silver platter and gold pins in a celebratory mood to be able to impeach the President of the United States. I think it's time we retire Nancy Pelosi. We have a two-front challenge, as I see it, here in the state of Colorado. We see what Democrats in control will try and yield to the American people. They're going to attack our liberties. They're going to attack our freedoms. They're going to attack our Second Amendment rights. And I'm very proud to be able to have an A rating with the NRA, with Gun Owners of America, the Sportsman's Foundation, to be able to protect those rights. We had a bill that the Democrats put forward on violence against women, putting in the very topic that's going to be spoken on today, a national red flag law. Every Republican voted against that. That is why it's going to be important to be able to retake back the House of Representatives. Do you realize if we hold on to the seats that we have and we flip 18 seats that happen to be in districts that President Trump carried, all of a sudden Kevin McCarthy is Speaker of the House and not Nancy Pelosi. Not Kevin McCarthy, Kevin McCarthy.
There's no T in my name.
I'm proud of the work that we've been able to do. One thing I think we need to recognize is that freedom is ensconced in the Constitution, but it's protected by Americans. Can we have the men and women who have served in the United States military, would you stand up and be recognized here today? It's because of these men and women, their willingness to be able to put their lives on the line for American freedom, that we have the liberties to be able to gather here today. We need to make sure that we are fulfilling the promises to our men and women in the United States military to be able to have the best equipment, the best training, and to fulfill the benefits to every veteran in this country. We keep our promises. I voted to do that. I hope you support that. It goes beyond so many other issues that you know that are important to work. We work and where we live. I started a small business caucus in Washington, D.C. We didn't have one. To be able to stand up for our small businesses and our opportunity to be able to create jobs. How are we going to be able to do that? By voting for the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, to be able to put more money back into the pockets of the people who earn it, less in Washington, D.C., and allowing our businesses to be able to grow and prosper in this country. That was a good idea, and with President Trump in office, we got that signed into law. We also need to make sure that we're protecting our water. Because of the actions out of our offices, we were able to stop the Forest Service with a mandatory handing over of our water rights to the federal government on conditional use of permit. Some would call that a taking, I call it theft. We'll continue to stand up for those water rights, for our private property rights, and our ability to be able to grow our businesses. I know we've got a speaker that's coming up that we're all anxious to be able to hear. I'd like to be able to close with gratitude to you for the privilege to be able to hold this office. It's your seat. It's our country. And I'm very pleased to be able to announce to you that President Donald Trump has endorsed me in this coming cycle. I'd appreciate your vote and support. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
And just as a reminder, I don't know if any of you people have been watching the Democrat debate and saw Bernie and Pocahontas the other night, where Pocahontas went up to Bernie and said, "I think you just lied about me on national TV." Bernie blew her off. He also blew off Tom Steyer. Is there anything more amazing than a group of billionaires like Mr. Bloomberg and Mr. Steyer telling us how they're going to take care of us? It's unbelievable, and that side of the leadership on that side has just gone round the bed. So, as a reminder, we're all Republicans here, okay? As chairman of this party, I would like you all to treat each other with respect. We can have respectful debates on issues. Let's not have a circular firing squad, because that hurts us. Hurts us overall, but let's debate the issues. Let's not debate the personalities or anything like that. We're Republicans, we're smarter than the other side, so let's act like we are, okay? And as a reminder, I forgot to mention the new shirt we have at the office. The Trumpinator shirt. And he's gonna be back because he's gonna win Colorado, I can tell you that right now. That's my prediction. Before I get to Matt, I need to call Isaac up real quick because and Isaac is our Trump employee. He works for Donald Trump. We didn't get somebody like Isaac in the last election until July. So if you don't think Donald Trump wants to win Colorado, here's the proof right here. Isaac?
Hi guys, it's great to see you. Again, my name is Isaac Bromberger. I'm your Trump representative out here for the Western Slope. It's great to see a packed house here. Just real quick, I want to put two things on your radar. Tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. at the Mesa County office, we'll be doing a voter registration training. All of you who want to be a part of the process and to be more involved in your community, I encourage you to come on down and just participate. It takes a quick 20 minutes and that's all it is. The second thing I want to put on your radar is on February 4th is the State of the Union address. And I just want you to keep watching our Mesa County website. I'll be getting a venue here, hopefully in the next week or so. I'd like to host a big watch party for the State of the Union, and I'd like to see maybe 200, 300 people attend. So just two quick things to put on your radar, and thank you all for coming. Take care.
The party will spring for pizza. 200 people in that office, that's gonna be interesting. Just as a reminder, the office is 1227 North 23rd Street, Suite 107. It's right in the corner, and if you're familiar with where we were in 2016, it's in the same building. We're just down in the corner office. This time I'm gonna call up our guest speaker for the day. I've known Matt for several years. I'm proud of the job he's done as sheriff here in Mesa County. I think he does a great job for us, protecting us. Being in this type of environment, it's thankful right now. And I'm not sure I've seen the final figures for last year, but I think over 50 officers were killed in the line of duty last year. And I think that our opponents fanned that flame and caused some of those deaths. And to have Matt here and to have him do the great job that he's done is just a great thing for us. So again, as a reminder, we're respectful of our elected officials. We're gonna have time for questions and answers. Be respectful, please. I'm going to introduce our sheriff, Matt Lewis.
All right, I'm told this is as loud as this goes, so back row, give me a thumbs up, you can hear me. All right, I will project and make sure. I've got a lot to cover, and Kevin promised me 15 minutes and cut me too short. So I'll take that up with him a little bit later. I did bring a PowerPoint. There's not a lot up here, but I have some very important things that I want to share with you today that I thought would be more impactful if I literally just brought it with me to show it to you rather than just spoke to you up here. And so bear with me. I don't have a little clicker thing, so I'm going to be walking back and forth. You and I are going to be really good friends. Okay? I am bad for buffets. I appreciate the turnout today, but you guys absolutely demolished a buffet, and I do business with this hotel as well, and I'm a little worried about my reputation with the hotel right now. So I want to talk a little bit about how did we get here. And this is not a secret, but some of the things that happened, I don't know that all of you know what my involvement has been in this. And so I want to be very specific with you today about where we came from, what we've been working on, and what you can expect from my office in the future. And so everyone knows the history of this bill, 1177. It was signed into law became effective in January. One of the important things that I'm going to discuss with you is this law required all law enforcement offices, anyone who employs law enforcement officers in the state of Colorado, to develop and implement a policy by December 31st. And this becomes very important in our discussion as we go forward. So,
Can you build some light? I'm going to try right now.
I don't have, no. I was going to make a joke about that, but see that, yeah. So I'll let them work on that. But I'll try and cover everything that's up there on the screen for you. So I want you all to know, and if you don't know, that I was very opposed to this legislation as it traveled through. I worked with, and I haven't seen her here today, Representative Janice Rich, developed some talking points for her that were utilized on the House floor, forwarded those to, we're about to be in the dark, everyone is touching light switches. I forwarded those were used in the Senate as part of the debate. One of the things that wasn't public that I'll talk to you about, many of you, if you followed this, have heard the name Steve Reams, he's the sheriff of Weld County, and Tony Spurlock, the sheriff of Douglas County. Those two individuals, one was a very large proponent of this, one was very vocally against this. And for 2 days, I spent 2 days with those gentlemen in a room and lobbyists on phones trying to find a way that, knowing that this was going to pass, we could limit the reach of this into our communities. We were able to make a few small changes, but nothing substantial, to be very honest with you. And then as this left the legislature and headed for the governor, I authored a letter to the governor asking him to veto this. And the governor did call me, personally called me, and wanted to hear why I was opposed to this. And I gave him a list of reasons, which I'll share with you. However, I don't think I had any impact on what his determined course of action would be. So I want you to know why I was against this. And I think I'm killing this thing. So, first and foremost, this was really narrowly focused on firearms. That is not a secret to anyone here. The extreme risk, the title of this law is extreme risk, and it flies in the face with some of the time constraints that are put on this law. So these are supposed to be utilized for the most dangerous people in our respective communities. And this very law allows a person to come to a law enforcement office, go through an investigation which takes time, petition the courts. There will be a hearing that day or the next day, so at least 1 day delay right there. After that hearing, that order would be transferred for service to the law enforcement agency. There's an additional 5 days that can be taken for service of that. And then a hearing within the next 14 days scheduled with the court. And so if we're honest with ourselves about this, and these are the most dangerous people in our community, those time frames make no sense to me. And that was a large argument that we got into. We have other more effective, thank you, Kevin. We have other more effective tools. And I'm going to talk to you about the strategies that my office is going to use moving forward. And we're going to utilize other tools in many of those circumstances. When we really believe someone is a risk, we're not going to adhere to this process in those days. We're going to respond. We're going to take law enforcement action that's appropriate to protect the community and not wait for all of those built-in time frames. Some of the other things, they're really, and this isn't a secret, there was no actual addressing of mental health. This is something where a person who is subject to one of these orders has to go out and figure out how to reestablish their right. There's not, once you've met this threshold, there's no go-by by which a person knows how to come back to the court and say, this should be removed from me. Civil process. This is a fundamental change that this law, up until last year's legislative session, sheriffs in the state of Colorado were responsible for all civil service in the state of Colorado, in their respective counties. And with this, now, this civil service goes out to every police department as well. And so it really infringed on the ability of the sheriffs to manage civil process. It really directed all of our police departments across this state to stand up a civil unit where they have no expertise, no training, and no staffing to do so. So I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but by a show of hands, how many of you live in unincorporated Mesa County, meaning not in one of the cities? Okay, so what I'm talking about today applies to you. If you did not raise your hand, I would highly recommend that you talk to your respective chiefs of police, because they may be doing something completely different than I am. And if you live within one of those city limits, their policies would apply to you, and they would have to serve these in those city limits, which is a huge difference between what we've done in the past. This created civil search warrants, and this has been 8 months since this has been signed. And this has caused quite a bit of work, quite a bit of trying to understand what exactly this new thing that's been created by the legislature is. We are very clear in law enforcement about our rights when it comes to search warrants. And those are based on crimes, that we can articulate facts to a judge that whatever we're going after is illegal evidence of a crime, and we can go through a process by which we are legally allowed to go and recover whatever that evidence or item is. This puts us at odds, quite frankly, with our district attorney's offices, because they are there to support us in criminal cases. They are not there to advise or support us in civil cases. And so this has created a different reliance that had been with our DA's office on our county attorney's office, who quite frankly does not have the expertise in this area. And so there has been a lot of learning over the last 8 months. And then finally, these things are inherently dangerous for us and for the public, every single time one of these comes up. So we get past what happened, and let's talk about now what. Let's talk about, we talked about the policy requirement. We talked about the fact that this is very dependent on where you live. Every single law enforcement office has to have a policy by December 31st. They are all different. What I tell you applies only to unincorporated Mesa County. And so I highly recommend that these conversations are also happening with our police departments. One of the things that became very important for me was to discuss this with the courts. How many, by a show of hands, have followed what's been going on in Larimer County? Reference extreme risk protection orders, okay? We're going to talk about those, but one of the failures that led to what I think is a worst case scenario in Larimer County was a lack of interaction between the sheriff's office there and the courts prior to when that extreme risk protection order was filed. And I say that, Sheriff Justin Smith is a great sheriff. He's a good friend of mine. He and I were on the phone this morning in preparation to talk to you, and I will share what his comments were about that failure. So let's understand what these things are, what these things are not. I hear a lot of times in passing, I hear people say, okay, well, what happens when my neighbor who doesn't like guns goes and puts one of these on me? They can't. They can't unless you are in a relationship with your neighbor. They cannot. And so I'm not going to read this slide to you. I hope you can see it in the back. If not, this information is available on the court's website, on our website. But these are all of the reasons that a person, they must establish this relationship before they can file an extreme risk protection order on another person. If these relationships do not exist, they do not have standing to file the order. The last one here is a law enforcement officer. And we'll talk about that because I have those examples from Larimer County that I'll share with you. But I want to be clear that this is not something that anyone who's ever met you in your life can decide that they don't like you having a firearm and can file one of these against you. Talk about the process. Who can they be reported to? 2 different processes. First, people can go directly to the courts. whatever respective court where they live. They can go directly to the court and they can file the appropriate paperwork. They can request a hearing. We talked, it will be within 1 day that hearing must be held according to the law, or they can come into their local law enforcement office. And the law enforcement office is not where you live, it's where the subject of the protection order lives. So if the person lives in a particular jurisdiction, that's where it would be reported and handled. I would much prefer, and I'll tell you why, but I would much prefer that they come to us, because we have the ability to investigate this, we have the ability to figure out. Oftentimes, we get calls, things are reported to us every single day, and once we investigate those things, we find out it couldn't be farther from what was reported. And the easiest example is somebody would call and say, I want you to come to our house and investigate a burglary. And we go out there and we figure out that this is a landlord-tenant issue. This is a civil issue between two people. Those things happen every day. And to my staff, I've been very clear that just because someone walks into our office and says, I'd like an extreme risk protection order, does not mean that they get an extreme risk protection order. We look at that and we look at all the tools that are available to us and try and figure out how we need to respond as a law enforcement agency. So this is the information, and I didn't want to put this up there so you could read it. You don't need to read it. But I want you to know that this is the information that is required to be addressed in the petition to file an extreme risk protection order. I keep shortening it to ERPO. But this is what is required to be reported to the courts. And so as they come in, the threshold can be very, very high for reporting these. I'm getting caught up here. So the threshold can be very, very high for reporting these. And I have an example that I believe is a good example and a right example of the usage of an extreme risk protection order. And I have one that I believe is worst case scenario and why we all fought against this when it was going through the legislature. But these are all of the things that would have to be documented in the petition. These are all of the things that a judge would see and could consider when determining whether or not to grant one of these and forward it to the appropriate law enforcement jurisdiction. So I have this. This is our policy. This is the first half page of a 5-page policy that our office has. It's not secret. I'll share it with you if you're interested. But I put this up here because we met the guideline. We adopted this policy and published it to our officers, our deputies and staff, December of last year. This policy represents a tremendous amount of work by men and women in my office. We collected various opinions from different attorneys. We looked for how do we do this with other counties that we thought were kind of leading the charge and doing a good job. And I'm a firm believer of sharing information amongst my law enforcement partners. And so this is a combination of quite a bit of work with quite a bit of input from a lot of people. But I want to highlight some really key points of our policy. And some of this is important enough that I really want to read it to you. This is the policy statement for our policy at the Mesa County Sheriff's Office. And I'm going to read the last paragraph there. It says, in doing so, members of the Mesa County Sheriff's Office shall protect the constitutional rights of all people. Office members shall carefully evaluate and weigh the rights of people to be free from unreasonable search and seizure with the rights of people to be free from acts or threatened acts of violence and respond in a reasonable and lawful manner. And that was important for me to put in there because I think this is a balancing act. And I will give you an example of where I think this is appropriate to use. But it is a balancing act, and I do think that this is not something that should be, because someone comes in and files the appropriate paperwork, should be granted or should be entertained. Some of the other key points in our policy is we have elected to appoint a coordinator, an extreme risk protection officer or coordinator for our office. And I think anyone who has ever been involved in any kind of business, we get a lot of first-year people straight out of college, first-year deputies, and what is at stake in this is too important for it to be left to a first-year deputy. Quite frankly, I have the greatest men and women that work for me. They do an amazing job for all of you every day, but these can be very complex, and there are things at stake that I want some review process on this. And so 2 things that we did. Last year we met with our chief judge here, Judge Brian Flynn. And what I said is, I am not going to accept paper from your office to my office and just blindly go serve that paper. We are going to conduct an investigation on the veracity of that information. We are going to make sure that the information provided was accurate. We are going to look into the risk associated with this person and figure out what the appropriate response is. And so what we have organized with our office is a way by which anytime someone goes to Mesa County courts and files a petition, the courts will notify our coordinator in our office, and our coordinator will be in those hearings. That is important because of what just happened in Larimer County. And I'll get to that. I don't mean to be cryptic about that, but I want to actually show what happened in Larimer County. But if we don't have someone in that room, if we don't have someone investigating the claims that are made in some of these, we will have extreme risk protection orders issued that should not have been issued. The other thing is, this is a command level decision for our organization. The only people who can approve this is the sheriff, the undersheriff, or one of my 3 captains. And these, we have been very deliberate about making sure that these go to the highest possible level in our office. This is the crux of our policy. So we have elected to make the standard for our involvement in an extreme risk protection order. We are quite clear in what our authority is when it comes to criminal offenses. And so we are also quite clear, we have the ability as law enforcement officers in the state of Colorado to take someone, even against their will, if they pose a danger to themselves, a danger to others, or are gravely disabled, to mental health services for a 72-hour health evaluation. We have those abilities today before this was ever law. And we use those. And quite frankly, I think it's more appropriate, because if someone comes to my office and says this person poses a risk to themselves or others, quite often they fall into one of those other 2 categories where our legal rights are already well established. And we're not dealing in a civil realm. We are dealing either with a criminal offense where someone has threatened someone else, or a school, God forbid, or something like that, where we have a criminal offense for them, or we have the authority under a mental health statute to actually take them to services. This focuses on the crime, this focuses on the individual in need of mental health, rather than focusing on the firearms, which was the intent of the bill as it traveled through the legislature. So I want you to know that for my office, in order for us to become involved in an extreme risk protection order, we must meet the threshold of either a crime, where we will issue a search warrant based on that criminal offense, or we will be moving that person to services for mental health services. This is not something where we will go to a person's house and collect firearms and leave that person there. We will deal with the underlying either mental health issue or criminal issue. We will also, as you can see, this is a screenshot directly out of our policy, if other law enforcement agencies request the help of the Mesa County Sheriff's Office, we will help them if they've met that same threshold. And this is important for me. This is the way that I, in my position, can still meet my statutory mandate of civil service in the state of Colorado. This is the way that I can still safeguard the citizens of Mesa County, who I'm responsible for. This is the way that I can give clear direction, where I'm not in this completely new and unknown territory of what is a civil search warrant, what is showing up on someone's doorstep without actually the legal authority to take some action with the person, not just the means or the item. And so this is what our office will be doing. Again, this only applies to unincorporated Mesa County, and our policies are going to differ amongst all of us. So I want to quickly, I know we're over time, I appreciate you staying with me. This part is important to me. This has already happened. Today we are the 17th of January, and we've had 3 of these in the state of Colorado that I'm aware of. One in Denver City and County, and I have been unable to get any information about that. Not for lack of trying. We've had 2 of them in Larimer County, and I believe we've had a best case and a worst case scenario. This is what I would submit to you as the best case scenario. And I will share the story This is an actual,
You've got time.
thank you.
Don't try to rush.
Thank you. This is the actual screenshots from the petition filed with the courts. And I've spoken with the sheriff's office over there. But Larimer County deputy, a Larimer County investigator, actually filed this petition. And this is a person who was in jail at the time the petition was filed. This person had been arrested and had been jailed for threats against a witness in a case. This person was sitting in custody, and all of these articulable facts, can you read those? I don't want to read them to you if you can read those. Okay, this person is determined and making statements that they are going to go get out of jail, get firearms, and go kill people. Jail phone calls, text messages to the parents, all of this is documented. And the last thing that Larimer County wanted to do was have this person be able to either bond out, finish their sentence, and be released from a judge, and actually be able to act on these threats. So they chose to file an extreme risk protection order on him. This is best case scenario. This person gets out of jail and cannot carry out that plan. All right? And I would challenge you. I know that this is not popular, but I would challenge you. Why would law enforcement not use every available tool to prevent this person, not every person, but in this circumstance, this person from getting his hands on a firearm after release from custody? So I've got to tell you, I couldn't be more proud of them up there. The opposite is also true. And this has been publicized. Some of you raised your hand. You know what I'm talking about here. But this is what I believe that we all talked about when we thought that this would be ripe for abuse. And this is a case out of Larimer County, same county. And the backstory to this is a Colorado State University PD officer was involved in a shooting years ago. And shot and killed a student at CSU at the time. That shooting was investigated thoroughly. It was investigated well. The officer was cleared from that shooting. And that officer has been going about his daily life and working for quite some time now. The mother of the deceased went to the court and filed for an extreme risk protection order on the Colorado State University Police Department officer, trying to ban that officer from possession of firearms. This is screenshots from the actual petition, all right? The first thing on there is where she marked the box that she had a child in common with this CSU PD officer. They do not have a child in common, all right? Then went on to, you can see the quality of this information. Literally says unknown, answers to these questions, unknown, could happen, don't know. This is terrible. There's no articulable facts that would lead a judge to issue a extreme risk protection order in this case. These are continued. Each one of these questions had a written response from this woman who was seeking a protection order on this CSU PD officer. So with these excerpts, with these excerpts in here, and I'll let you take a look at them, but I cannot imagine getting this as a judge, why I would ever entertain issuing an extreme risk protection order. Now, the judge does not know if there's a relationship between this woman and the PD officer. The judge does not know that, but the Larimer County Sheriff's Office was very familiar with this woman. She had hosted protests, and they could have intervened in this and given that information to the court. And that is one of the reasons that we have designated a person to go to each and every one of these hearings to make sure that this doesn't happen in Mesa County. So let me tell you what the story is with this. The hearing happened at 10 o'clock yesterday. The Attorney General's office, the Larimer County Sheriff's Office, the Larimer County Attorney's Office all attended this hearing with the judge after it was forwarded to the Larimer County Sheriff's Office for service. They immediately went back, filed a review with the judge, and that meeting took place yesterday at 10 o'clock where the woman who filed this came in, tried to represent herself, and ultimately the judge rescinded this order. This woman will be charged by the Larimer County Sheriff's Office with perjury and attempt to influence a public servant. I spoke with the sheriff up there today. They're doing the investigation in it. Important to note, not only was there no relationship here, but the CSU PD officer did not even reside in Larimer County. So it was filed in the improper venue. Neither one of those things were caught by the court system as this was blindly approved. And so I know I'm being critical, but that is why I want my command staff in these hearings. We have access to information that our courts do not. It's at our fingertips. We know these people in our community. We deal with them on a daily basis. And we can be part of this process to make sure that these things don't happen here. And so I spoke to Justin this morning, Sheriff Smith this morning, and they said that they don't have a time frame, but they are working on the investigation. It's been assigned right now. So I know we're over time. Thank you, Kevin. But I wanted to give you, number one, how did we get here? Number two, what can you expect from the Sheriff's Office? Number three, good and bad examples of what we're already dealing with in here. And do we have time for questions?
Questions, yeah. So we got time.
Okay, all right. So I want to take your questions and have a conversation with you. Yes, ma'am.
So both of these had a reach back. I mean, that one was 2013 to 2017, and the other one that you said was the best case scenario was 2019. How far back can somebody go and determine that you're in extreme risk?
There is, everyone hear the question, how far back can you go? The one that was filed with the person in custody was 2019. He was arrested for those charges in 19. The other one was 2013 to 2017. The shooting was years old. And so the question is, how far back can people go? There is no limit. You establish that relationship under this law. As long as you can establish that relationship, I will tell you there is no limit on when the relationship took place. The questions, and I'll go back up to that, the questions that you must answer for the court do require you to talk about how recently this occurred. And that's why you saw in the CSU PD application the dates of 2013 to 2017. But you do have to show, some of these questions are imminent threat. Imminent is not 6 years ago. Imminent is it's happening right now today. And so some of this is educating our court system on what that should look like and what we're going to push forward and what we're not. So for me, and I'm going to go off a little bit, I'll take more questions, I promise, but that is why I want people to report these to my office and not directly to the courts. Because we can look at that and say that this is not an imminent threat. This is something that happened, has been resolved, this person, we've had contact with this person since then, and we know that they are no longer dangerous. We know that we've had other issues with them or not. And so for us, I want that information coming to us so that we can then provide a context for our judges rather than someone go in and just make a blind claim. Yes, ma'am.
Is there protection for people with domestic violence where the aggressor is trying to disarm and go after their spouse, partner, whatever?
Yes.
Protections for those people?
So the question is there protection for victims of domestic violence where a spouse may be trying to disarm another spouse? And yes, but in my opinion, not enough. So there are protections in there where if there are any active cases between the two parties involved in this, they must be disclosed, and they do look for those any active cases. Those could be civil cases, criminal cases, any type of cases between the two parties involved in this, which hopefully is going to signal to the judge or to a law enforcement agency that we need to look a little bit further into motivations there. In my mind, not enough. It requires us to look at those, but it doesn't really give good direction on the weight that should be given in those scenarios. Yes, ma'am.
Does the person making the filing have to swear that what they want to be done is, that it's honest and truthful, or do they just say anything they want to on the form?
So the question was, does the person who is filing the petition have to swear to what they say on the form? And the answer is absolutely they do. Let me see if I think I cut it off. So right above where she marked that box that they had a child together, it says, I swear under the penalty of perjury the following information provided is true and correct. And that's why they are going to charge her with perjury. But yes, they have to go file this with the court and swear to the information provided with the judge.
Sure, if they go to the court instead of you first, the court makes the order to you, and it doesn't fit your criteria, what are you going to do?
So then we fall back to some of our other orders. So we've met with Brian. The court will not issue an order here without connecting with us. So we have a process by which we appointed the coordinator. That is my greatest fear. But two things. Number one, should it happen? And can it? Yes. It shouldn't because of the process we have in place. But if it were to happen, we have 5 days by which we can take time to serve this. And I've been very clear with our chief judge that we will take those 5 days and we will reinvestigate every piece of information that was put into those papers to make sure. And if need be, we will go back just like Larimer did and challenge the veracity of the information with the judge and ask for him to repeal that order. But the hope is we never have to enter into that. We never have to have that adversarial position with our judges because we've been included in the hearing from the get-go. That's why we set up that process.
Matt, I really appreciate all the trouble you've gone to try to minimize the effect of this red flag law here in Colorado within the constraints of your job. But I want to point out that all these red flags that are now being passed by legislatures and governors like the ones in the United States are all going against our Bill of Rights. Yes. Okay? That's the fundamental law here. Okay? None of these red flag laws is really legal. Okay? So I want to ask your opinion on something. Why can't we just simply cut through all the red tape that you are going to go for here and do that by declaring this county, Mesa County, the Second Amendment sanctuary?
So just to make sure everyone heard him, if you did not, the question was, why can't we cut through all of this, all of the work that's been done, and simply declare Mesa County a sanctuary county? And here is my answer, and I promise you my answer is not going to be popular here, right? My answer is this. There are many, many counties across this state that have gone together, whether it be a board of county commissioners, whether it be a board of county commissioners and a sheriff or other elected officials, many of them included countywide or something, and they put out a proclamation saying we are a sanctuary county. And I believe that that confuses the public. I believe that that document is a value statement, and we've done that here in Mesa County in 2013. Our Board of Commissioners issued a proclamation about the Second Amendment and their deep support for the Second Amendment. They did not go so far as to declare a sanctuary. If you do declare a sanctuary county, that does not change Colorado law. That does not change the fact that people can still go to the court. These can still be forwarded to police departments and sheriff's offices around the state for service, and you still find yourself in a position to try and respond to these. And so I will tell you my opinion on that is I think that that is a value statement that can be very misleading to the public. I want to stand in front of you and tell you what you can expect from me. I do not want you to believe that because we issued a statement in support of the Second Amendment that it means that we negated this Colorado law. We don't have the authority to do that. What we do have the authority to do is navigate our way through this where we protect the rights of our individual citizens and wait for this to be constitutionally challenged.
But do our county commissioners have the ability to do this? Do they have the right to do this?
They have the ability to, the question is, do our county commissioners have the right to do this? They have the right to issue a proclamation, any proclamation that they want. They did so in 2013 supporting the Second Amendment, and they've stood by that proclamation. They can do that. I'm describing to you the after effects if they were to issue that proclamation. It does not change the law.
Ken, I guess the simplest thing is county commissioners do not make law in the state. That's the state legislature signed by the governor.
It's only
That's why it's important.
So
we're also big believers in states' rights, right? Right now, our state's right. Well, but our state says this is wrong.
if I could, please. So let me address this. The elephant in the room is this, and I get this every single day. I've gotten this for the last 8 months. Sheriff, how are you going to even entertain enforcing this law when it clearly flies in the face of the Constitution? That is the question. That's the crux of what you're asking, if I'm right? So let me be upfront and address what I've said over and over. The very same Constitution that provides that right also separates the powers of government. And I am part of the executive branch of government. My job is the enforcement of the law. I do get to prioritize and I do get to protect my citizens of this county. What I don't get to do is simply ignore the law. And we do things every day. I'll use the example of the magazine gun bans, right? I have never, as your sheriff, ever investigated anyone for magazines. And so that is Colorado law. But what we've said is it's impossible to prove, and we're not going to make that a problem. But I will also stand in front of you and plainly tell you that if I could use that law to prevent violence on my citizens, I would use it today. And so the fact of the matter is, two things must happen. Number one, someone must actually suffer because of this law, and that gives them standing to then challenge this law. That challenge would go through the judicial branch of government, and this law would either be deemed unconstitutional, and it would be erased from any enforcement across the state, or it would be upheld, and we would be forced to find a way to deal with this anyway. We have three branches of government. Our legislatures write the law, our judicial branch interprets the law, and our executive branch enforces the law. And so I say that, I understand, I don't feel differently than you do. And this is a very difficult position to be in, and I believe that I've tried to navigate the best that I can where I can protect the rights of my citizens and still be a law enforcement officer in the state of Colorado.
Thanks, Matt. Shifting gears a little to the Fourth Amendment. If your officers show up at a house and this bill's limited to guns, what are you going to do when you see other things? Propane bottles, knives. Where does that go? It's really an imminent threat. Why is this limited to guns? What are you going to do? If it's an open view, what is open view? What are you guys going to do? Don't you have big concerns about that research?
Yeah, if you didn't hear the question, what are we going to do when we go to a house with a search warrant? Are we focused on guns and we see other things that are there? So first and foremost, we're going to be operating under a criminal statute, which I showed you our policy. So we have a legal right for this search warrant, and every single search warrant that any law enforcement officer does is narrowly focused on what the items to be seized, a description of those items, and where they're likely to be located. So we do enter a house, and we have a search warrant for, let's say, firearms in this case, and we enter a house and we see the easiest one is drugs on a coffee table. We do not ignore those things. That happens today. We might go into a house on a drug search warrant and find stolen property. And our officers are very familiar with the process by which to go back to the court and amend that warrant. We do that amendment would allow us to take that additional item that we find that is of concern, whether it's illegal or it is contraband in and of itself. But in cases where we're in a home and we find other things, if someone is determined to harm themselves, we cannot take everything in a home that could be used to harm someone, which is why in our office we are going to be moving that person to services, not collecting every available means in the home. However, if there are other illegal things or other things that would be of concern, we can go back to the judge, amend that warrant, and we can seize those as well while we hold that property.
Time for one more. Yes, sir.
Does the law address, if you go to a house, how you determine who has how many guns?
So the question is, does the law address, when we go to a house, how we determine who has what and how many guns? And so the answer is no, not at all. Again, it relies on this very poor petition, and there is a section in the petition where the petitioner provides their knowledge of what guns are located in the home or that they have knowledge of that are owned by the particular person who is the subject of the order. So in those cases, we're often relying on very, very poor information, which is why we want to do the investigation. I don't have any way, nor do I ever want to know how many or what kind of guns my citizens own. It's not my business. And so But it's very important that we realize that we will never have complete information in that. We may be looking for, and I'll use the example of this terrible one, the CSU PD officer. It's noted in here in one of these writings that he has a duty weapon because of his job. And so we're looking for one pistol. And you can come to my house looking for this one, and I promise you're going to find other guns in my home, right? And so those things are going to happen. But the realities of it are, if one of these were to be issued, it requires surrender of all firearms. It also, so we would have to serve that looking for all firearms in the home on a search warrant if we met the threshold of that criminal activity. The information we have would not be adequate.
One more? No. Okay.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, due to time constraints, I'm going to have to cut off, but Matt will probably stick around a little bit if you want to talk to him one-to-one. It's a great opportunity. He's very accessible. He does not bite. Okay? I just want to thank you all for your patience today. This was a fantastic turnout. The February event is the Lincoln Day dinner. We won't have a lunch in February, but then in March we'll be back for lunches. Please come to the Lincoln Day dinner. Please grab these candidates that are running for office. This is your chance to talk to them, right? Find out about them. Don't just make a guess. Thanks again so much. Yes, Richard Hawthorne.
With the information there's 2 jurisdictions, one in the unincorporated area.
Come talk to me. Come talk to me.
So, just a reminder, this is going to be up on our YouTube page. Go become a subscriber and look at all the videos we have up. Thanks again. God bless you all, and God bless the United States.